So welcome to my video. I'd like to go over a little bit about my life because, you know, things get lost and sometimes you don't know where you come from. I grew up in Okotoks, Alberta, which is just outside of Calgary. I had an incredible childhood. My parents, Victor George Lovell and Joy Helen Ostrom, met in Calgary, Alberta, where they were both born and raised. Started a family, and first came my brother, who's 7 years older than me. His name's Jeff. My sister Susan, who's 6 years older than me. I did finally get my mom to admit that I was the oops child. Saved the best for last. They purchased this acreage in Okotoks right around the time I was born. My dad built it from the ground up. Drove from Calgary every night after work and built this place. So it was truly a family home made of a lot of great effort on the behalf of my parents to give us kids a great place, and they did. I often quip that Okotoks was close enough to the city not to be a hick and close enough to the country not to be a city slicker, and that's really the way it was. Terrific people, and just a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up. Acres and acres of land to ride your bike and do whatever I wanted to do. So it gave me a great launching pad to move into things. As I grew up, I had a real desire to play sports. So I played every sport under the sun. Did that all through high school, did well in school, got along with my mom and dad. People listen to my childhood and they go, I can't believe your childhood was that good, but it really, really was. So I'm very, very thankful for that. Moving into high school, I was big into hockey, and I was that kid. I was that Canadian kid that was gonna play in the NHL. So I lived it. I lived hockey. When I was 16 years old, I got asked to go to a training camp for the Calgary Canucks Junior B team. I weighed 132 pounds, and I was playing against guys that were double my weight. I did very, very well. I scored a couple goals, got lots of assists. There was bench clearing. You got 40 guys, 18, 16 years old, who want to prove themselves. Everybody was on the ice beating the pulp out of one another except me. And I remember sitting there on the bench, leaning on my hockey stick, and I see the general manager of the team coming around the outside of the arena. And he walks in and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just waiting for this to sort out so we can play hockey." He goes, "You should be out there grabbing a man, get off the ice, never come back to my rink, you're done." And I was heartbroken about that. And that was pretty much the end of my hockey. It just crushed me so bad. So that was the end of that. But in that time, I'd also been very, I loved basketball. I would go into the school first thing in the morning, 6 o'clock, and I would get the keys and I would shoot hoops till I started school, and then I would play after school. So I always had a real competitive attitude, and that got me as far as being scouted by the University of Calgary as a point guard in high school. And they said, "You know what? We want to see more, and if we like what we see, maybe we can, arrange for you to come to the University of Calgary." So I actually went back to school after I graduated because I had an extra year of eligibility. Third game of the season, I broke my ankle so severely I was in a cast for 4 months, and that was the end of that. So, okay, strike two. This is just not gonna fly. All through that time, I loved music. So starting in grade 6, I sang in the choir. I started playing trumpet. That love just kept going and kept moving and kept moving. And by the time I hit high school, I had met 2 other very misfit guys. One fellow was a drummer, and he wasn't really super popular, but an awesome guy. Another guy who was considered like one of the heads, it's like he was like, listen to heavy metal, and I'm this jock guy. And the 3 of us, bass player, guitar player, drummer, started playing and writing songs. And it was a very important part of what I did in high school because it was completely separate from everything else. We ended up rehearsing every day for almost 3 years. In spite of all of my sports stuff and in spite of all the school stuff, we practiced every day for 3 years. And finally what happened is we ended up opening for a very big Canadian band at the time called Harlequin. And we opened a show for them. And from there we started getting gigs. I went to Inuvik for 3 months, my first professional gig right out of high school. Just got my cast off. My drummer quit school to go and play drums, and we went and did that. So we got back from Inuvik, and the guitar player decided that he didn't want to do it anymore. So we kind of rebuilt the band and got an agent, and it was really honestly not what I'd expected, but I knew that it was something that I wanted to do. So playing in bands was pretty much my life at that time. It was all I really wanted to do. I was completely invested in it. The gig that we did in Inuvik had set us up quite well financially to move into, better rooms and try and create a better situation. So with Randy leaving the band after the Inuvik thing and a few other changes in personnel, we relaunched it as the Cube Concept, which was a band that we wanted very much to play the A room. So, we got ourselves an agent and started really trying to hone our what we were doing. Part of that was being a Styx tribute band. I was a huge fan of the band Styx in the 70s, and so we really went after trying to capture that kind of progressive music at the time. We did actually record an album, which we came to Vancouver and ate 3 for 99-cent hot dogs for a couple of weeks, and recorded it and pressed it and sold that at our gigs. So, I was, early 20s, and we had a record and all of this kind of stuff, but it just didn't materialize. So the agent decided that we should hire a singer. And so we hired a singer. And so this singer, who was also named Brad, and myself shared the vocal duties. I was the bass player in the band. And so we went out and we started getting a little bit better success, but there was a lot of internal problems with that band. And it ultimately culminated one night with this singer and myself getting into a fight in a hotel room. And he jumped on my back and choked me and partially crushed my windpipe. And basically, I talked like this for 8 months. That was some really bad news because the whole project had to be put on hiatus for me to try and heal up. I didn't know if I was going to be able to sing or not. Didn't know. The one thing I did know was I was not going to perform music again with a singer who was just a singer. 8 months later, we relaunched the whole thing and started it as Bojest, which is kind of after my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies at the time, the last remake of Bojest. And it sounded like Bon Jovi, who were really big at the time. So our hair got really big and we started off doing our thing, playing cover songs. And then one day we realized that the Alberta market that we were playing in was a lot heavier. They wanted to hear heavy music, heavy metal. That wasn't what we could do. So we decided one day to move to Vancouver. So literally, we made the decision, and a week later, we were driving to Vancouver, not knowing what we were getting ourselves into. My mom was devastated that I was leaving. I thought you were going to stay home till you were 30. I'm like, no. But away we went. And we showed up at the Feldman Agency in Vancouver and said, hey, we got a band. And they came and saw us and said, great. We're going to take you under our wing and we're going to give you one of our higher end agents. But we went out and we worked and we worked and we worked and we worked. And we started to make our way into the Vancouver scene. And then I had more throat problems. We'd been working for so long, so hard, 6 nights a week, no time off. I just burnt my throat out. It was pretty much that. My vocal cords were shredded. And so my throat specialist told me that I needed to take some time off. And so when I went to the band with that, they basically said, we're done. We're all moving back to Alberta. You're on your own. So I ended up in Vancouver with no band and an attitude that was, this place will not beat me. So I took odd jobs. I had to actually take welfare, which was really hard for me to do, but it was necessary for a very, very short time. And over that time, when I started to get some money ahead, I actually paid back the Feldman Agency for commissions that we owed for that band. Not realizing at the time they thought I was crazy for doing that because they'd already written the money off, but they actually respected me a lot for doing it, and it gave me an opportunity to stay in touch with the agents. So one day I got a call that said, Brad, I've got a band for you to join. They're called Metropolis, and I want you to go out and meet them in Edmonton. And so I did that, and I just about died on the trip out there in the middle of January in a snowstorm. Literally terrified. Columbia Icefields area on a Alberta highway at midnight, and a complete whiteout and spinning. I remember sitting there going, please, 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 please. And I made it. So that turned into 12 years playing with those guys, trying to write, trying to record, and just playing and becoming one of Vancouver's most popular and very well-respected club acts at the time. So I'm very, very proud of that, and very happy to say that those guys are still a big part of my life. It really ended up being just a brotherhood. What station is this?
Topside Network.
What?
The Topside Network.
This is the Topside Network.
What's the song?
Night Train. Around the time I joined Metropolis, a couple of years after, I met the lady who was going to change my world. And I remember meeting her and being incredibly taken with her. I remember calling my mom and saying, this is the lady. And so Shannon and I, started dating, and a year later, my daughter Taylor came along. I was 26, just about to be 27. So I ended up being a new father and a band guy with this lovely lady, and started off on that chapter of my life. I remember being very scared, very scared about having this new baby, and not knowing, what my life was going to hold. And I remember saying to my dad, I think I have to quit music. And I remember him saying to me, he gave me a card. And he said, here's a guy in Langley. He will hire you. You'll make good money. You will have a job for as long as you want it. You'll be in the union. So he goes, here you go. He's a friend of mine, call him. And he walked away. And he came back to me. And he said, but I want you to know that I've watched you starve for everything for so long to do something that you love to do. So because I want you to think really hard about that. Because the things that make you happy now in life might not be what you think it's supposed to be. It's because I want you to really consider before you call this guy. And that, to this day, blew me away, because my father was a very hardworking guy who believed in being solid. I always kind of thought that me being a musician was something that maybe he didn't understand. But that was a pivotal moment in my life for him to basically tell me that he believed in me, which I always knew that he did. But that was a moment that I think every guy should have from his father. Touring became very, very difficult with the band after my daughter was born, and fortunately we'd done well enough in Vancouver that we were actually able to get some house gigs. So shortly after my daughter was born, about a year later, we were able to work 4 nights a week and stay in the same place, so I didn't have to travel. So I did that from 1992 until 1995, 96 at a place called the Scottsdale Inn. Went to another bar in 1996 till about 1999 called the Champagnes, all with Metropolis. And it was hard. It was hard because I was a hands-on dad. I was dad by day, rock star by night. And sometimes the hours were hard because my wife worked very, very early hours. Like, she'd be gone at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was getting home at 2 o'clock at night and getting up at 6 a.m. So I was pretty tired. I always believe that family is important, and it was very important to make sure that they were taken care of. So again, lucky to be able to play music, raise a family, not to have childcare, and I was with a lady that I loved a lot. Metropolis ended up disbanding in 1999, 2000. After several years of the house gigs, we ended up at a place called Studebakers, and we had a 1-year contract there. One night the owner came in, and he gets up on the stage on a very busy night, and he proceeds to drunkenly scream at the 200 people that were in there, calling them every name under the book, and basically berating the people that were coming to his bar for making him broke. He fired everybody. He fired the band. He fired everyone. So I was left without a gig and wondering, what am I going to do now? Of course, throughout that time, just to back up a little bit, Metropolis had tried to become a recording act. Being young fathers and playing at night, we didn't have a lot of time, but we tried. I ended up writing an album with my guitar player Steve under the name Joe Fish, which we sold, we sold enough to make our money back, which was pretty cool, but we're just never able to launch into what we really wanted to. So, the days of becoming a recording star were getting very, very numbered. And the industry was really about to change anyway. Looking back in hindsight, there were some big changes coming in music. On the home front, I renovated my house incessantly. Didn't have a ton of cash, so we were fortunate enough to be able to buy a home in 1992. So a year after my daughter was born, my parents helped us out to put the down payment on a house. As anybody, you want it to be as nice as possible. Well, we don't have any money. We work really hard. So I just started renovating and renovating and renovating, and it was a constant process. Metropolis is done. My son's come along in 1996, so now I've got the 2 kids. We're starting kindergarten. My daughter has anxiety issues going to kindergarten because she doesn't want to leave dad. I got my son bundled up, less than a year old. I'm taking kids to school, playing in the band, and then all of that changes because now there's no band. Now what? I walked into a dinner theater in Port Coquitlam called Maz and Me's. I'd never been there, but I heard they had entertainment. So I walked in and I said, "Do you need anybody?" And they looked at me and said, what do you do? And I said, well, anything you want. Anyway, long story short, is I got the gig, and they asked me to be a Rod Stewart impersonator. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I always kind of look down my nose at that. But after realizing how much people enjoy tribute artists, it's actually a very cool thing to do. So, you know, little guy, big nose, fuzzy hair, it worked for me and I had a gig. So off I went to Maz and Mies. I get a call one day after about 8 months working at Maz and Mies. And it was the owner. And he said, Brad, I'm very sorry to tell you, but I'm afraid we're going to be shutting down. Because the place had done good, but it wasn't, you know, huge. And there's a number of reasons, but anyway. So we're going to be shutting down. I'm like, oh, that's awful. When's that happening? Well, now. So here I am, out of a gig. I'm like, no, what? This can't be happening. The weird part is, in my time that I'd been working at Maz and Mies, two of the old performers from Maz and Mies, who I found out later had a rather large falling out with the owners, and that's a whole other story, had decided to open their own dinner theater. I had no idea where it was going to be located or what it was going to be about. But they approached me and said, look, we would really like it if you came and worked with us. But our theater's not open yet, and we're in the middle of putting it together, and you know, this is what we're all about. I was half desperate and wasn't sure, but I said yeah. So that ended up becoming the Giggle Dam, which was right next door to Maz and Mies. And the Giggle Dam opened pretty much the same day Maz and Mies closed. You know, give or take a couple of weeks, it was really, really close. So I just bounced from the one place to the new place and not knowing anybody. And it became evident really, really quick that I was working with a bunch of very kindred souls and people that really, really cared about what they were doing and were very, very sincere people. I look back on it and I just can't believe how the stars lined up for me to land in that spot. We talk about it and it's just a weird thing. So now I've got a new gig. Don't know if it's going to last 2 months or 2 years or 2 weeks. Just don't know. Eventually they asked me if I wanted to come on as the marketing guy. And I said, well, I don't have a clue about marketing. And they said something very nice in the fact that they said, we don't really care about that. We just know you believe in the place. And so I became the marketing director of the Giggle Dam Theater and still am to this day. The house renovations were still going. Unfortunately, I lost my dad in 1999 due to complications from his diagnosis with ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. So that was really quite devastating for me. But it did make for me that, you know, it did verify that I wanted to be what he was to me for my kids. And he was always there. And I've been pretty lucky to be that with my kids all of the years. So, you know, it was nice to be around for my kids. My daughter, in my early 40s, developed into be quite an amazing singer. She used to sing with Disney movies when she was a kid. And one day I was listening to her and she was singing along with a Charlotte Church CD, and she was about 10 or 11 years old and nailing it. And so I ended up taking her to a vocal coach who ended up taking her on, and from that point she ended up doing a couple of operas with the Vancouver Opera in their kids choir. She scored the highest Royal Conservatory vocal marks in Canada the one year that she was tested. And then she hit high school and never sang again. It's just the strangest thing. Sometimes I wonder if I would have pushed a little harder, if maybe she would have, you know, been able to cut through, but that'll always stymie me completely because she had an incredible voice. It could have taken her places. My son, growing up there, really, really great guy. Just takes on the world at that time in his life, and it was great to be around the kids. I ended up going to Toronto to be on a television show called the Superstar Handyman Challenge. All of the years of renovating my house and all of the projects gave me a little bit of a resume to send in when they did an open call. So I got a telephone call one day after deciding to do a major renovation on my house, saying, "Can you come to Toronto next week?" And I'm like, okay. So I went to Toronto to hang out with Mike Holmes and Jim Carrick and be a part of this show, which was basically an elimination show based on how good you could build stuff. So I went, and I ended up going out at number 6 out of 20 guys. So that was something to be proud of, and a really amazing experience working with Mike Holmes and Jim Carrick and being part of a reality TV show. So things changed rather abruptly in my life. Shannon and I decided that we would separate because the relationship wasn't where we wanted it to be. Fortunately, I thought to myself very early on in the situation that I had to try and learn from it, even though it was incredibly painful. So I ended up on this new life journey that started from, a very painful place that, I don't know, it was very abrupt, and it was very severe, and it felt very much like what I now affectionately call ground zero, which it really was. It was a place to start with a complete overhaul of what I believe, who I am, what I want my life to be. I pushed hard. I've always been the kind of guy that if I feel like I'm failing, I fight harder to not. So I started my own company in there called Broad Level Music, where I write and produce radio commercials. That's slowly branching into other media and broadcasting opportunities, which are things that I'm really interested in. I took up a thing called Nordic poling, which is like cross-country skiing without skis. I did a couple of half marathons doing that. I finally recorded a single called Come on Christmas, and without expecting it to make me a worldwide sensation, it was just a beautiful thing because I was able to get the guys from Metropolis together to do this recording. We hadn't seen each other for a very, very long time. So it was a wonderful experience. I've watched my daughter go to post-secondary school in a couple of different directions, and to be a veterinary assistant, and seeing that she's moving into her own shoes, that makes me very, very happy. I love her and I'm very proud of her. So I think she has exquisite potential to be a person who has a lot in her life. My son, the same thing. He just recently graduated from high school, and he's going to be an electrician on his way to hopefully becoming an RCMP, which has been his lifelong dream. So both my kids, I'm very happy that they're entering into their 20s and seeing that they can be capable and move forward, because as a parent, that's my job, is to make them know that they are able. I'm very, very proud, to say that, a few years later, I'm one of the few people that can say that my ex-wife is a very, very good friend. And I would hope that one day my kids would see the whole situation as not so much a painful thing that happened in their life, but their mom and dad showing them that, what is generally perceived as being a very bad thing can be a very, very good thing, and a thing that can actually make your world better. One of the things that I did last year, just before I turned 50, was I went on a family trip to Italy for a month. I've never really traveled much in my life. A couple of small trips, but we never traveled a lot with the kids when we were younger because we didn't have a lot of money and we didn't know where we wanted to go and all that. So it's the first time in my life that I've ever taken a month off to do nothing. Going to Italy, changed my life in the fact that I've never in my life felt the detachment and just like the peace of being in another environment and realizing one day that, you know what, I'm actually away. I'm away from my email. I'm away from my phone. I'm away from all of the things. So moving forward, that's something that I want to pursue more. Not necessarily traveling the world and taking a month off. I think it's really important to go to Victoria for a day. Keep moving and finding that peace of mind, so to speak, because you can get so wrapped up in your daily life. So that's a real goal for me, and that was an incredible eye-opener. My life is becoming more about what are the experiences that make me feel good. A certain degree of contentment has got to be a major goal. I kind of, I've got a lot of regrets in my life, like should I have, tried harder at this, or should I have, done this or that differently? I regret really deeply that when my kids were little, I was so focused on building a house or writing a song that there's a lot of things that I did with my kids that I can't even remember. That's really, really sad. I should have, I would regret maybe not being more openly loving to the people that I really, truly cared about. It was like, there's always a parameter, and I guess what I've learned is that, parameters don't count. It's like if you're happy and you're joyous, then if you want to bounce off the walls, bounce off the walls. Don't lock yourself in. Life has just been this huge growth process and taken all of these things that have happened in my life and put them together. So, I think that a lot of it starts with contentment. I think thankfulness and forgiveness with yourself and the people around you. I don't want to sound too philosophical. I've gone through that. I'm kind of a realist. So, it's ridiculously simple when you just come from a place of, I hate the term "it is what it is," but sometimes that's just what it is. So I truly believe in calling a spade, both with myself and with other people. Stand up with yourself. Stand up to other people, because nobody's going to do it for you. But I also believe in giving credit where credit's due. So if somebody does me a good turn, I believe in being very thankful. I believe that everybody should be given the credit that they're due, whether it's for being a good parent or hurrying up to cross the pedestrian street so the guy in the car can get to work faster. I mean, it's these simple little things. And if there's one thing that I want my kids and everybody else in my life that cares about me and that I care about, I want them to be able to say, wow. And a BMW wouldn't suck.